So yeah, I wanted to have this interview because one of my favorite things to do is to study people that have like achieved a certain amount of success, and just really curious about their habits and their routines and their methods, and just like even their mindset, and like what was like the ingredients that allowed them to achieve, whatever it is that they achieved. And I like to study, all in all realms, in all areas. So when I found out that you were the, last year, it was 2015, World Endurance Cyclist, World Champion.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's so interesting and that's so amazing. And I really wanted to, take the time to interview you and just ask you some questions and just share, with, the community, like that you're here and that you've, achieved this, and like what really brought you to where you are now.
Cool.
So yeah, I'd love to just start with like your story. Like how did you get there? How did you get here?
Yeah. So I wasn't a cyclist growing up. I've been now a cyclist for, probably 12 years, and it's commitment that has gotten me to where I'm at today. But I grew up doing lots of things that kids do, playing soccer. I played tennis all through high school, and I was also a band nerd and marching band and stuff. And I didn't even know that cycling was a sport. So in the beginning, it was lack of exposure that didn't get me into cycling. I saw people wearing neon and spandex on road bikes and thought they were just a bunch of dorks out there riding their bikes, which they are. But I decided when I was a junior, senior in high school to start running. And as a teenager, that's how I dealt with teenage angst, feelings of not fitting in, feelings of not being good enough, body images, stuff that almost every teenage girl has.
Yeah.
And that really helped me get confidence in myself, and I felt really good, and I was going to the gym every single day, but I didn't really know how to train for running, so I kept injuring myself. I kept getting stress fractures and things like that, so I would go to spin class at the gym while I was injured and do the elliptical trainer. And one day at work, when I was about 20, this guy asked me to go mountain biking. And it was just a bunch of like old guys at work. So I said, hey, I've never been mountain biking, why not? And the importance of that is having an open mind to trying new things. And when you're younger, it seems easier to take on new challenges without worrying about the implications of what might happen. So with mountain biking especially, and probably with yoga as well, people are afraid to try because they're afraid, what if I'm not good enough? What if I'm not flexible enough? What if? But I just went out and did it, and 3 weeks later I was lining up for my first race, which happened to be the New Mexico State Championship. I'm from New Mexico. And I signed up for the intermediate category because there was no one signed up in that category, so all I had to do was finish and I'd be the state champion. But I had no idea what I was getting myself into. That's awesome. And what should have taken an hour and a half took over 3 hours.
Wow.
Which was a really long time. But I finished, and I was completely hooked, and I just dedicated myself to training, and I was still going to school, and I went to grad school and everything, but I focused my life around cycling, and I moved to communities that helped build me and surround myself with supportive people. And I started racing cross country, and I did that for several years. And cross country is short course racing, so 18 miles, so maybe like 30K, and hour and a half. And I found that it wasn't really a welcoming community, and it didn't serve what I believed in. And it took me a while to figure out what those things were. You rode your bike around in circles and you go places, but it was all about beating people and being on the podium. And it's really cutthroat because it's such a fast-paced thing. And I wanted to have adventures. I wanted to go see where the trail took me and be on my bike all day. And when you're racing cross country, the training and the racing doesn't do that. So a friend of mine introduced me to endurance sports, and I started having these adventures on my bike and started doing races, 100-mile races, 50-mile races, multi-day races, and I found that, hey, I'm actually kind of good at this, and I wanted to travel the world. So I started doing things that we'll talk about soon, and I started traveling the world racing my bike, and last year I won the world championship.
Wow.
So just focusing on a goal and a dream and not giving up.
Yeah. So how long was that race that won you the
24 hours?
champion?
So it was there's different disciplines of mountain biking, and so like in running there's, sprint, 5K, 10K, marathon, ultra marathon, 100 miles. So this is ultra distance. So
Right.
the format of this race is actually not my favorite, but it's 24-hour racing. you ride your bike around in circles for 24 hours, and
Wow.
I had never done a solo 24-hour race. You can do them in team formats where you trade off every other lap, and that's really fun. But this one happened to be in California, and every year it's in a different country. So I thought, well, I can drive down. I'll go give it a try and see what happens. And I went, and I didn't know, and I had no idea what to expect. And I just had my team of one person, my husband, supporting me. And yeah, what they do is they have a track, and you ride your bike around in circles on this track. And you don't stop for 24 hours. And it's whoever rides the most laps or the most amount of distance in 24 hours wins the race.
Wow.
So
Without stopping.
Without stopping. I mean, you can stop, but if you're
Right.
trying to be competitive,
Right.
you have to figure out how you're going to pace yourself for 24 hours. You have to race. You have to figure out your nutrition. You have to stay awake, and there's a lot of variables that go into it. And
Yeah.
I attribute my success to that because I have done a lot of different distances of endurance racing.
Yeah.
I knew what my body did well, and I also talked to people who had been successful in 24-hour racing to say, hey, what
Yeah.
have you done? And I
Right.
took their advice, and I
Awesome.
decided I'll apply this to myself. So I think I ended up riding, I don't know in kilometers, but it was 250 or more miles in 24 hours and more than 29,000 feet of climbing.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. So climbing, was it not on a flat? Was it the same track that you went around?
It was the same track.
Okay.
So you go up
Oh.
and down, and on single track, and you
Okay.
have lights that you put on your bike and your helmet at night, and
Wow.
it's cool. It was actually better than I was expecting it to be. To be honest, I had kind of a negative attitude, not super negative attitude, but I was like, it's
Yeah.
not going to be that fun, but
Yeah.
I got to try it.
Yeah.
And because the course changes so much over 24 hours and the light conditions change, it actually is really fun. And there's so many different things that you focus on that
Yeah.
it's a completely different thing than riding your bike for 100 miles.
Right. And so the logistics of eating and going in the bathroom and so you couldn't sleep. So did you have to just caffeinate or?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I mean, the longest thing I had done before was this race in Colorado called the Vapor Trail, and it was a 130-mile backcountry loop. So you start at 10 o'clock at night, and it's a giant 130-mile loop, and it took me I think I was the only girl, so I stopped at every aid station and ate pancakes and Cheerios. So I was out there a little longer than I needed to
Yeah.
be, but it took me about 18 hours. So
Wow.
that time I was drinking tons of Red Bull. So I knew that
Right.
that was the only time I've ever stayed up all night.
Yeah.
I love my sleep, and
Yeah.
I hate not sleeping. And
Yeah.
I actually think it takes years off your life doing,
Yeah.
lots of overnight stuff.
Yeah.
So I just went on feel. So I didn't take in any caffeine until probably 1 o'clock in the morning. And I think I only had 2 caffeinated drinks the entire race. And some of
Yeah.
my sports nutrition had a little bit of caffeine in it, but
Yeah.
I had the caffeine available, but for some reason I didn't really need it. I
Yeah.
felt the hardest part was when I finished the race. I felt fine during the race,
Yeah.
but afterwards, that's the worst I've ever felt in my entire life.
Right.
I couldn't stand up straight because my back muscles from being
Oh,
like
yeah.
this were just
spasm
total
or?
Yeah, and my husband had to lift me like a granny, in and out
Oh,
of the
man.
car.
Oh.
And the hotel we were staying in had bars for handicapped people,
Yeah.
and I was using them to sit down on the toilet.
Oh no.
But yeah, I only went to the bathroom once, which is probably not healthy for your kidneys, but
Right.
it's good when you're racing because you lose time when you have to stop to go
Right.
to the bathroom. So I stopped once.
So you do stop. You don't. There's no.
You don't urinate on yourself. I mean, people.
Use diapers or anything like
No.
that.
I mean, people. I actually can't do it. I was in another
Yeah.
race once, and I actually lost. It was only a 50-mile race, but I
Yeah.
lost the race because I stopped to go to the bathroom.
Really?
And I couldn't just let it go on myself. Or I was trying. I'm like, pretend you're in the ocean. Just let it
Yeah.
go. And it wasn't working. So yeah, I stopped once. I didn't sleep. I started off having kind of sports gels and things like that. I treated the first 8 hours as I would a 100-mile race, and then
Yeah.
after that I switched to things, really weird things like Pop-Tarts and miso soup and
While you're riding, or?
yeah. So you come through a pit area.
Yeah.
So you stop at the pit and you stop for a second, or you have somebody hand you a Dixie cup of something.
Yeah.
And you take it with you, or you stick it in your pocket and
Yeah.
you eat. But to eat miso soup, you have to stop and just
Right.
take a shot and go.
Okay.
But
Okay.
it was competitive because for the first probably 10-12 hours, the girls racing me, they'd only be 1 or 2 minutes slower per lap.
Wow.
So it was about staying consistent, and I knew
Yeah.
that the nighttime was going to be important, and that's when I won the race, was at night, because people started stopping and sitting down, and mentally, 24-hour racing is definitely, there's a big mental component.
Yeah. And how do you handle that mentally? going when you want to stop, and like continuing and staying motivated and staying focused.
Yeah, so to prepare for anything that's difficult, there's some mental preparation beforehand. So building up your mental strength. So you have to think about what could happen and how you're going to deal with those things. And then there's going to be lots of things that are going to be out of your control that happen. But just accepting that you're going to be able to get to the finish, to decide in advance, I'm going to keep moving forward no matter what. And it's normal in bike races to feel bad on your bike for periods of time in longer races.
Yeah.
And
feel bad, like physically bad, mentally bad, both.
Both. Like we call it going to a dark place.
Yeah.
And it is normal to go to a dark place. It doesn't happen every race.
Yeah.
During this 24-hour race, that was during when there was lots of forest fires and stuff, and they said, oh, if there's a fire, we'll evacuate you. And I remember wishing that there'd be a forest fire, because it's hard to be in the lead because you're vulnerable and you have everything to lose, and to be in the lead that long for 24 hours, that's a long time to be, oh my gosh, I have so much to lose. But that's normal in our life. Like we work so hard and we have things, we get attached to this thing, who we are, and that's our identity for that moment. And knowing that you're doing your best, and knowing that you're gonna show up to the race, show up to whatever you're doing, and just give your best effort. That helps mentally prepare, because if you're doing your best, that's all you can do. And but the hard part is accepting that sometimes your best isn't going to be winning, your best isn't going to be getting a promotion, whatever those things may be. So accepting that is your best, and being happy with it. And another thing I do to stay strong mentally is positive attitude, and that's something that's been easy for me from the beginning growing up. I don't know why. I think some people naturally are good at being positive, and other people have to work at it, and even people who are good at it have to work at it. So focusing on all the positive things around you, because it's easy to focus on the negative, and then you get caught in this downward spiral, and then you're always scanning the world for negative things. So if you start today, if you find that you're a negative person, or even if you just have negative thoughts, it's okay to feel bad and have negative thoughts. Everybody has them, but then just start turning them into positive thoughts, like, oh, it's hot out, like today, it's hot today, oh, it's hot, or oh, it's hot, it's sunny, this is great. So finding ways to tell yourself the story in a different way.
And so you said that it usually, like, you kind of expect to go to a dark place, each race, or not always, but you kind of expect it. So would you say that, like, knowing that it's coming allows you to be more mentally prepared, so that when it arrives, you're like, okay, this is the dark place, this is just part of the process, and knowing that it's just part of it, and it's not, I don't have to really like take it personally or take it seriously, or just allow myself to be there and realize that it's just part of the deal.
Just knowing that it's not permanent, and it's not going to last forever, and even pain, like, it really hurts to race your bike, and knowing that pain isn't going to last forever, and sometimes it hurts, sometimes it's a bad pain, and sometimes it's a good pain, and it's how you want to interpret your pain, I guess.
And I think that's just a really good lesson in general, like the pain, it doesn't last forever, and that it's, everything is always in a constant state of flux and change, and knowing that and just reminding yourself that allows you to kind of get through it. So how big of a part did like mentors or coaches play in your success, or did they?
It's been a challenging road. I've had coaches who've tried to coach me for physical training, and I think that you're your best coach. Like, I think from coaches you can learn about your body, or not even necessarily in cycling, like life coach, whatever. You can learn how to interpret what's happening inside you. So coaching has helped me figure out what my body's doing. I don't have a coach anymore. I do more physiology testing to learn where my weaknesses are, and then I go work on them and come back to see if I've improved on them or not. It's tough in cycling to find the right for what I do, because there's not many people that do what I do. So I try more, instead of finding coaches and mentors, to find people that inspire me. And there's been people in the sport. My husband has definitely been a mentor for me from the business side of things, because I'm a self-managed athlete, and I quit my job and I quit my team a couple of years ago. So he believed in me and said, I believe you can do this. And sometimes all you need is just that one person. It doesn't even have to be your spouse to say, I believe you can do this.
Totally.
And it set me on fire. Like, I couldn't believe what happened once I just set my mind to it and said, I'm gonna take this risk and I'm gonna do it. And just looking for people that inspire you and help you to grow. I think it's important to surround yourself with people that believe in you, and that it's a good environment, not people who don't believe in you and say, oh, like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
And my yoga teachers when I lived in Boulder really helped me in my life as life coaches because of the things I talked about in our yoga classes. I was somebody who was a perfectionist, type A personality, who was very hard on myself. I go in yoga and look around and see everybody doing things I couldn't do and felt bad about myself, and I'd be hard on myself in my races. In my first year as a pro, I cried on almost every race while racing because I was mad that I wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
So going to yoga and finding instructors that I connected with really helped me love myself for who I was and be okay with who I am today. And it was years of that process, but that was a huge part of becoming more self-aware and being a better person. And that's helped me in my career too, because there's lots of athletes who are they're insecure, so they act a different way, and I was insecure. I acted a certain way, or I'd feel a certain way that wasn't healthy, and learning how to be nice to yourself and accept yourself for who you are today, and focusing on improvement, not on the result, and not labeling and judging yourself. That's so important.
Yeah, totally.
In any sport or anything in life.
I agree. And you said something also that like the coaches helped you actually figure out your own body, and and I think that's really what a good coach does. It's more about like them teaching you how to read your own body and to like ask yourself the right questions and figure it out for yourself, because I think we are all different, so it's like we do have to kind of figure it out for ourselves, but having someone that can even just ask the right questions is really valuable. So what is your diet and typical kind of breakfast, lunch, dinner?
So I changed my diet about 3 years ago to a plant-based diet, and I was afraid to do that because I was doing it. I'm an athlete. What if I don't get enough protein? What if I mess myself up? What if I don't get enough like iron? But I decided that this was healthy because a number of reasons. Number one, it prevents cancer and heart disease. And I thought, well, I'm trying to take care of myself as an athlete. Why am I eating all this stuff? And I read this thing just a couple days ago. There's this great book called Becoming Vegan, and it's basically a textbook, but it cites all these really great studies. And it was the most comprehensive cancer research study ever published, and this was in 1999, and I want to see if there's a new one. But it talked about how meat and alcohol contribute major risk to cancer at lots of different sites in your body. And Dr. Esselstyn's book, Preventing and Reversing Heart Disease, that was a big thing for me to read, because in my family people have high blood pressure, and you can be, in my family, people aren't overweight, they're fit, and they still get high blood pressure in their 50s and 60s. So I thought, well, I don't want that to be me, so I changed my diet. So it's not 100% plant-based because I travel around the world, and sometimes I have to eat what people give me. But when I can control it, I try to keep no processed foods, low oil, and so typical breakfast, I eat steel-cut oats with not flax, but chia, hemp hearts, maple syrup, and fruit, and a coffee, and water. And then the rest of my day, I use squirrely bread with almond butter. I have like one of those sandwiches. That's like 20 grams of protein right there. And then I eat lots of different grains. So pick quinoa, rice. I like gluten-free pasta. I'm not gluten-free, but I just like the way it tastes better. And then some sort of like soybean or black beans, and tons of vegetables, and all different variations of that. And so I do a lot of my own cooking. I'd love to see more vegan restaurants in Kelowna that aren't processed foods.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I hear you.
And like lots of water. I drink tea every day.
And so when you're traveling, how do you manage do you bring your own food ever, or?
Yeah, I do bring, it depends on where I'm going, because...
I know, if you're going to like Nepal or somewhere, it's
but
a little hard.
It's easy to eat vegetarian there, but
in Asia it's easier,
It's hard to bring your own food though, so I'll bring what I can. Like I usually bring individual packets of almond butter, so at a race I can have, there's always bread, so I can have my race breakfast is just bread and almond butter, and that's it, and some water and some coffee. And then I just do what I can and try to eat the best I can. But when you're at a stage race, they cater it. And sometimes, like I was in South Africa recently, like a month ago, and they actually had a vegan option, which was great. But it was basically lots of beans. And while that's great,
Right.
it was hard
For
during the
racing,
race.
yeah.
And I wasn't recovering because I wasn't able to eat the amount that I needed in beans to recover from my effort. So I had to
Right.
eat meat a few different days to help myself recover, and it did
Yeah.
make a difference. So
Yeah.
it's finding a balance there
Yeah.
as an athlete, and I'm still learning as much as I can about that.
Yeah, yeah. And what about daily routines? Like, do you have a consistent daily routine? And I know you travel a lot, so I know that can be challenging when you're, traveling like in airplanes and then in different places. But would you say that you still maintain? Do you have a consistent daily routine?
I'd like to have more of a routine, and that's something I'm trying to build in, even when I'm traveling, even when I'm home, because it feels like things are out of control sometimes. But things that are non-negotiable, that are daily routines I do every single day. I focus on getting 8 hours of sleep. I like to get 9, but it's rare that I get less than 8 hours of sleep. And if I do, I'm not very happy about it. I'm grumpy because it's so important for recovery of your body and for overall health and for how you're going to approach your day the next day to get sleep. So that's a huge priority, and that is part of my routine, is going to bed. I go to bed kind of late. I usually go to bed at around 11, and I sleep till 7:30, sometimes 8. And eating breakfast every day is a daily routine. And education is a part of my daily routine, learning something about whatever I want to focus on, whether it be marketing, because a big part of what I do, I'm a self-marketed athlete, and learning how all those platforms work, or learning about mental health, physical health, how to connect better. So every day I'm focused on learning something.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
I'm not physical every day. I take rest days. So riding every day is not part of my routine.
Okay. Do you do something physical, but do you do some sort of exercise? Sometimes you just need like nothing.
Some days I just need nothing.
Yeah.
I'd say I'm active 6 days a week, but there's 1 day a week, sometimes more than 1 day a week, sometimes 2 when I'm really tired, where there's no activity happening because my body needs the rest because I push it so far.
Totally. So do you have like a training program that you do to prepare for races? And then does your program like cycle depending on like the races that you're gonna do, or how does?
So when I'm racing, when I'm in a racing phase, I don't ride my bike very much because you need to recover. So during race season, and if there's back-to-back races, I'm only riding 8 to 10 hours a week. When I'm not racing, that's when you're training. So the off season is actually not the off season; it's just off season from racing.
Right.
I train 15 to 20 hours a week on the bike, and then I'm trying to do other activities on top of that.
And I know you do yoga. Do you do any other kind of cross-training stuff?
In the past I have, and I'm trying to make a commitment to do more running and cross-country skiing in the winter, but I've been doing races in other continents in January, February to seek out some sunshine.
Yeah.
It would benefit me more to do more cross-training.
Yeah.
But it's hard to do in the season, and I'm racing 9 months a year, so I either need to race less or I need to just accept that I can't train on my bike, and I think I will benefit from doing more cross-training.
Yeah.
But there's times where I don't do yoga for a month or 2, and times where I do yoga 3 times a week. And that's the best possible thing that I can do for my cycling, because not only are you working your upper body, it's better than going to the gym and lifting weights because you're using your own body weight. It helps you with balance, and in mountain biking there is a lot of balance. Or if you're about to crash and you correct yourself, having that strength and that awareness to just, as a reflex, correct yourself.
Yeah.
And also the breathing and meditation side. I want to build meditation into my daily practice, but that's something I haven't done yet. So when I find my yoga mat, that's a time for me to really focus on my breath. And it's kind of like technical mountain biking in a way when you're doing a challenging flow class, because you can't think of anything else. You have to be focused on what you're doing, and that calms my mind more than anything.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. And what would you say has been like your biggest obstacle?
Myself.
Yeah.
Building a ceiling. People build ceiling. Everybody
Glass
does it.
ceiling,
You build a ceiling for yourself, and thinking that you can't do something, or thinking that you'll never be. How many times have we said, "I can't do it. I won't be able to." All these self-defeating things, and we're way more capable than we actually think that we are. And by pushing my limits on the bike and pushing my limits now in my business, I'm realizing I am more capable than I ever gave myself credit for, and I've achieved way more than I ever thought I could just by trying. So fear of failure, fear of what people are going to think about you, or what you're going to think about yourself, that's what holds us back, is ourself.
Totally. And so how do you overcome that?
I think about defining success in a different way, and this is what I did my TED Talk on, redefining failure. So if you're afraid of failing at something, it's because you have emotional attachments onto what it means if you fail. So if you're focusing on growth and improvement rather than am I failing or succeeding, then you're always going to be winning because you're growing. And also, there's things that you can't control that are going to happen. So focusing on what you can control, not what you can't, is really helpful when you're afraid, because you go into a situation and accepting that there are going to be things that are out of your control, but if you feel like you have control somewhere, that helps you take the next step.
Yeah.
I deal with fear a lot in mountain biking specifically because I'm trying to really become a very skilled technical rider. And when you have to like ride, like I've been working on jumping stuff. So going off something where you can't just like drop your front wheel down, where you have to go and there's you
have to like get some air.
Yeah, and that's full commitment because you can't slow down. Once you start riding off that jump, if you slow down, you're gonna go and crash on your head. So you have to go fully committed in and like increase your speed, take your fingers off the brakes, look to where you want to go, and just go. And I feel like that's a great analogy for life. You have to look where you want to go. Don't look at all the things around that are scaring you.
Yeah.
And just go for it.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh, I saw some of your videos, and it looks like, for me at least, it would be totally fear invoking and terrifying.
Well, you do baby steps, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think there are some people that like get the kind of the thrill of that kind of scary, just cliff jumpers and things like that. Like they get thrilled from that, so it's just, you got to commit 100%, I guess, just like decide that that's what you're going to do and just go for it and fully. Yeah, that's awesome. So what kind of advice would you give to people? Like, what do you feel like are the key elements to achieving your goals?
I think having vision and being around people that support your vision. I don't want to say get rid of people that don't support your vision, because some of the people you actually can't get rid of because you might be related to them or they might live next door to you. But spending time and being in communities that support what you're trying to do is really important. And believing in yourself, and when you fail, because you will fail, or when you have bumps in the road, just accepting that this is temporary, this isn't permanent, this doesn't mean that I suck, this doesn't mean that I need to give up. Just keep moving forward and focusing on where you want to go. And believing that you can get there. I think people give up too soon when they're trying to do something because it's hard. And trying to have...
They want the quick fix and the instant gratification. And
it's hard to be patient. So being patient and not giving up is, I think, the key. And just working hard. Yeah. People think, oh, you're just gifted, you're just talented. But no. It's hard work. Any person you see that is successful, it's not because they're gifted. It's because they worked hard and they didn't give up and they kept going. Even when things were hard, that's how they're successful. Yeah. They just make it look easy because now they're so good at it because they've worked so hard at it.
Totally, exactly. It's like you see them at that end point where they make it look easy, but you haven't seen them struggle all along the way, and like how much work they put into it and how they started out, knowing nothing. And we often forget that they didn't, come out of the womb doing that.
And just doing things that you want to do, like don't give up. If you say, my greatest fear is not failing. My greatest fear is looking back in my life and saying, I wish I would have. Yeah. And I'm really proud to say that I don't have any of those feelings right now in my life. Yeah. And if you can look back and just pick one thing, even now, saying, I wish I would have, it's not too late to go do that. You are never too old. My father-in-law is 68 years old, and he's an amazing mountain biker, if we're just talking about mountain biking. My dad is 63, and he's just learning how to mountain bike. So you're never too old to start something. Yeah. My dad started doing yoga just a couple of years ago, and now he does it every day. He's not intimidated by the age, and I don't think 60s are old. Right. But I hear a lot of people using age as an excuse, or using lots of excuses. Yeah. So the second you start making an excuse, cut yourself off and just say, no, I'm going to do this. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I agree. You're never too old. There's so many people that I just saw a thing on Facebook the other day that was like all the people that had started, way into their 60s and 70s, and it's proof that it's possible. Yeah, and trying new things helps you always be growing in your life. And I think that's what makes you get old, is when you stop trying new things and you stop growing. So I agree. Stagnation is the death of a lot of people, I think. Yeah. So just to close, what would you, if the title of this is How to Be World Class, so how would you answer that? I'd say in order to be world class, you don't have to win races or be like a CEO or any of these things. you have to be inclusive. You have to be willing to help people. You have to have a great attitude, and you have to be welcoming, and you have to work hard. And I think if you do all those things, then you're going to be world class.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking
Thanks,
this
Anna.
time. It was so
Yeah.
fun, and good luck on the races to come, and I'll see you in class.
All right.
Thanks.